Columbus has a lead pipe problem. Tens of thousands of homes in the city are still connected but to the water system through lead or galvanized pipes. Like Emily mentioned, these are zinc-based models that we have to replace by 2037. Our job was to build a quantitative model to answer one question. How much money does Columbus need to set aside right now in 2026 to fund the program all the way to the deadline of 2037? Hi, my name is Amog Navada.
Hi, I'm Ishan Patel.
And our friend Krill couldn't make it to the presentation. We had three main objectives. First, it was to estimate the total upfront cost required in 2026, and then make confidence interval, and then finally compare the loan-based structure with the grant-based model. Now, before we made the program, we had to understand how LEAP worked. So we went all the way from homeowners to the amount, to the time when the loan is repaid. Now we have a timeline, and we understand that the contractors and their bids are accounted in the LEAP program as well, giving us the least costly bid and putting an upfront cost of $10,000. Now, before we started, we had also had to know what we knew. 38,645 service lines right now have lead or galvanized pipes, and 55,015 are unknown. This is the 59% unknown share, and it's the core uncertainty model that we had to absorb. The federal deadline is 2037, and our number in our model is sourced from real data, and nothing was assumed without justification. Now, finally, this is our recommendation. We recommend that the city fund $182.4 million in 2026. This is the 95th percentile of our simulation, meaning that reserve is sufficient to cover all program costs for 95% probability. We'll walk through exactly how we got here.
Now, looking at the five-stage Monte Carlo process that runs 10,000 independent trials, each trial runs from the full program from 2026 to 2037. Stage one is eligibility, which is where we model the known lines and model the unknown lines with the model logistic discovery line, and then subtract lines already handled by the capital improvement program and insurance. Stage two is demand model across three channels: proactive city outreach, customer initiated requests, and emergency leak situations, which then follows a hump-shaped curve. Stage three is disbursement. Here we did something important. The city always selects the lowest of three contractor bids. If you only fit your model to the chosen quotes, you underestimate the true cost because you're only seeing sensor data. Stage four is repayment, looking at sales, refinancing, HELOC, and inheritance as their model as competing risk. Stage five collects the peak cumulative cash deficit across the 11-year window. Now looking at the math that breaks down everything, we could look at the take-up timing as the product of deadline pressure and affordability. The deadline pressure rises logistically towards 2037. Now looking at replacement costs, it's a log normally fitted to the raw bids growing at 3.81% per year from the BLS producer price index data. Repayment is modeled as competing risk where all probabilities sum to one across sales, refinancing, HELOC, inheritance, and no event. Most loans have no trigger in any given year, and the interest rate path follows a basic process calibrated to weekly Fed mortgage data from 2010 to 26. Assumptions that our model made are labeled by how they were derived. Green dots are directly from program data. Orange are reasoned from clean data. And purple is scenario parameters. And blue are fitted to external sources. Now looking at some of the key insights. One being the 10,000 cap erodes every year. So by 2033, the median job exceeds the cap. Two, the repayment triggers are competing risks and they are mutually exclusive from each other, not independent. Three, the bid data is censored. We corrected by fitting all 192 raw bids. And four, the loan savings are eroded by inflation. Repayments reduce the reserve significantly in log normal terms.
Across 10,000 trials, the loan model produces a mean reserve of $127.1 million. This is the main thing that we had to find out. Next, we have in the light blue, the 95th percentile of our loan model, which is $182.4 million. In orange, we have the grant model 95th percentile, which is when money is never repaid and it requires $270.9 million at the same confidence level. The loan mechanism cuts the required reserve by 33%. That's the financial case for enforcing repayment. Year by year, the cash flow chart shows disbursements growing steadily and surging in 2037 as deadline pressure peaks and procrastination at its peak as well. Repayment grows but never comes to close to offsetting disbursement within the program window. Cumulative net flow reaches approximately $125 million by 2037, consistent with our mean reserve estimate of $125.9 million. Repayments grow through this period but remain suppressed by the high rate environment. And the inflation chart shows exactly why. The base rate of inflation is 3.81%, and we see that starting around 2029, it opens up and reaches roughly $2,700 by 2037. In this high inflation scenario, it approaches $6,000. That gap is what drives people out of the program before the deadline.
So now looking at our model validation, on the left is the contractor bids against the log normal. The KS test p-value is 0.76, an excellent fit. On the right is the ACS tensor bands against the Weeble, 6 data points all near the diagonal. So this proves that our model is well fitted. On the line subordination, if the city routinely waives repayment at refinancing, the required reserve raises to 210.5 million, a 23% increase from prior, and that's meaningful, but still well below the 270.9 million of the grant model. Now, looking at the uncertainty evaluation, our tornado chart shows the uptake rate at the dominant source of uncertainty by a wide margin. The reserve swings from 132.7 million to 230 million, depending on whether the participation is high or low. And the loan versus grant comparison on the bottom confirms the loan mechanism saves 43.3 and or 44.3 million in net present value and cuts the reserve requirement by 33% at the 95th percentile. Now looking at some known limitations of our model, we flagged for channel overlap between proactive leak and customer loans creates a small conservative upward bias, as was the MPV calculation covers only 2026 to 2037 by design, as well as the Weeble KS test is marginal due to band aggregation, not distributional misspecification, and uptake uncertainty is wide because we only observed 127 pilot households. More program data will narrow this. Now looking at our final recommendation, we say the city should fund 182.4 million in 2026. This is sufficient with 95% probability under the loan model, as well as under a confidence interval on the 95th percentile is 180.6 million to 183.9 million, a 30 or 3.3 million range on a 180 million estimate. This, alongside 127.1 million expected need, is our recommendation for the city. Thank you.